Yeah. What's going on, everybody? And you know what you locked into. This is the second episode of Night Chronicles. You were here with me and the one and only, the classy one, Mr. Neutral. How you doing, Mr. Neutral?
I'm very well, thank you, Trill. We're back again, episode 2, and it's going to be another tremendous look back at the Fight Night history on Fight Night Chronicles and iBoxingHub with you, my man. And I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Definitely. And before we get started, you know we got to have a word from our sponsors before we kick everything off. Yeah, you're locked in. You're locked into episode 2. And that's right. This is Moore versus Foreman. Shout out to the comment section right now. We're getting everything started. Shout out to Alexander. I love George Foreman. So does everybody. Mr. Neutral.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are starting this show off the right way. And the only way that is possible. We're talking about the one and only, the fight between George Foreman and Michael Moore.
Yes. This was the pinnacle fight of George Foreman's second career. You know, by now you should have all heard the name of George Foreman, the destroyer of the 70s, the man who once ruled the heavyweight division with raw biblical power. But by 1994, the legend stood in the twilight of his years, chasing something far greater than another belt. He was chasing redemption. When Foreman retired in 1977, he walked away from the fame and the fury. He found faith, become a preacher, built youth centers, and raised others out of the struggle. But 10 years later, that inner fire returned, and in 1987, he began his second act. Slower, heavier, but wiser. They mocked the comeback, but the wins kept coming. 24 victories, built on timing, ring IQ, and a calm belief that destiny wasn't done with him yet. In 1991, he went 12 rounds with Evander Holyfield for the heavyweight title, losing on points, but earning back the respect. And 2 years later, he dropped another decision to Tommy the Duke Morrison, a younger, faster man. Most thought that would be the end of the journey, but Foreman didn't just fight opponents. He fought systems, and even the WA, who refused to rank him. Foreman and Top Rank took them to court and won. The decision opened the door for the final challenge, Trill.
Mr. Neutral, me and you had a discussion about this fight.
Yeah.
Right. And we talked about this was like a lot of people looked at this fight as kind of like Ali and George Foreman in reverse.
Yeah.
Now, George Foreman being Ali and Michael Moore being the young George Foreman who went up against Ali. Would you like Claire to elaborate on that a little bit? Because that was the consensus going into this. Well, after the fight, a lot of people started to look at it more like that. But I know during the fight and around the build-up of the fight, people thought that George Foreman didn't stand a chance. Matter of fact, people actually didn't even think that he deserved a shot at the title to be there. You know, so a lot of people credit his star power outside of the ring. People loving Big George because he was just a likable character, you know. So a lot of people didn't give him not a shot. You know, they gave him a puncher's chance, but they really didn't give him a shot. They thought that the young man was going to go in there and do what he's been doing to all the other opponents that he's been in there with, and that was stop him. But things didn't go according to plan, Mr. Neutral.
No, they certainly did not. And you're quite right. This was the sort of the reverse situation that George Foreman once faced as the unified champion or undisputed champion, as he was known back in 1974. Uh, he now found himself in the position Ali found himself, his second career. Ali had to come back and do it all over again, as we remember, after his incarceration. And he had to come back and he had to go through the same process, 24 wins, before he got to, the likes of Holyfield and Tommy Morrison. However, it was a bit of luck that he actually got the shot at the title, with others, dropping out. So George was the benefactor, of a strange situation, when Michael Moorer was, the unified IBF and WBA champion. So, in a way, but Michael Moorer did agree to fight George Foreman in 1994, and and history went on to sort of repeat itself. But we'll talk about that in a minute. When Foreman retired in '77, and come back in '87. There's a picture of Evander Holyfield, Don King, Mike Tyson, Manny Stewart, who was Michael Moorer's trainer when he was at light heavyweight and guided him to that light heavyweight title. And Michael Moorer is actually only one of four boxers in history have actually held a light heavyweight title and a heavyweight title. So, he's built some records up, but nobody had given Big George a chance at this time. Michael Moorer was seen as a destroyer of men, much in the same vein as George Foreman back in the early 70s. So Big George, no one was giving him a chance, Trill, in this one. Rather much like Ali in 1974. But people should have learnt lessons from Ali and this sort of situation. But again, the media and fans and hardcore would not give George any hope against this man. Brooklyn raised in Detroit's legendary Kronk Gym under Manny Stewart. He fought through the light heavyweight division like a storm, 22 straight wins, all by knockout. And when he moved up to heavyweight, the power followed him in 1994. Moorer stood undefeated, 34-0 with 30 of those wins coming by knockout, a frightening 88% knockout ratio, Joe. So Stewart shaped that early rise, but it was Teddy Atlas who took him on because Stewart had enough. Michael Moorer was becoming a bit of a problem child in the training gym. He would stop listening to Manny Stewart, and Manny Stewart was not the type of trainer.
Yeah, a lot of people said that about Michael Moore, man. Like he was hard to deal with, But I seen something different. I'm not even gonna hold you, Mr. Neutral. I seen something different in Michael Moore. I seen a fighter. I seen a fighter who wasn't there for the hoopla, who wasn't there for the circus, and a lot of times that rubs the media the wrong way. And if you rub the media the wrong way, those are the people that got the pins. And it's not like social media back in the days. We had to wait to hear what the reporters had to say. So the reporters had the ones that had the ink. So they'd be able to report what they wanted to say about this guy and make people feel how they wanted to feel about this individual. But the interviews that we seen is like, when you hear silly questions sometimes, and we laugh about when fighters respond to silly questions, like we just seen Brian Norman Jr. when they asked him about outfits. And he was saying this thing.
Fashion. He got me talking about fashion.
Yeah, he talking about fashion. To me, that remind me of like how the character of Michael Moore was.
Yes, no nonsense.
Yeah, he was a no nonsense guy. He was there to fight.
He hated it.
Yeah, he was there to put paws on people. That's what he was there to do, and he did a good job at it. I think that this fight, just like as well as the George Foreman loss to Ali, I think that this loss to George Foreman affected him the same way, maybe even worse, because I think Michael Moore was one heck of a fighter. Yes, he had fights after that. That he was able to win monumental fights. But still wasn't the same after this loss to Big George. But we talked a lot about this fight. I think it's about time that we get into it.
Let's
How do
do
you
it.
feel about that, Mr.
Let's
New?
do it, baby. Let's do it because this was a fight of strategy. Because George Foreman had told interviewers, before the fight, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to wear this man down and then I'm going to catch him late, and that's it. It's going to be over. And Michael Moore scoffed at this strategy that had been, George was plainly putting out there to the media and everyone before the fight. Back
Yeah,
to you.
and Big George asked for this fight.
He did. He did.
Yeah.
He was 18 months out the ring, George.
Mhm.
He was part of the HBO team, as you can see there in that picture.
Yeah,
So he's 18 months out.
he called a couple of Michael Moore's fights. His fights at light
That's
heavyweight,
right.
fights at heavyweight. So yeah, he was familiar. He was at ringside, called some of Michael Moore's fights. So yeah, definitely he was familiar with Michael Moore. So it's time, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank everybody who's locked in with us right now, live. Everybody in the comment section. This is the second episode of Fight Night Chronicles. Michael Moore versus Big George Foreman.
To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right, without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still fights with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable stars.
Tonight, an impossible dream fulfilled or shattered. 45-year-old George Foreman faces heavyweight champion Michael Moore in his quest to regain the most glorious title in sport.
Yeah, we got Big George Foreman, 71 wins, 68 KOs, 4 losses, 0 draws. Yeah, Big George looking like he's ready. And
He was
we got
so
Michael Moore.
calm.
Yeah, we got Michael Moore, 35 wins, 30 KOs, 0 losses, 0 draws.
That. What a record going
Yeah,
into that fight. And he just beaten Evander Holyfield in a shock tactical win.
he was looking mean. He was coming out. Both guys coming out.
Here they go. So
Little Big
George's usual stance, the power of Foreman. Oh,
But you see, like, Michael Moore came out firing.
yes,
He
sir.
came out firing, coming to use his age. He said, I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna beat up on the old man. And this is the first round. He was coming out. George was trying to find some distance, second round.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know how he's the first Southpaw champion, Michael Moore.
definitely. And he was ferocious, like we were saying before. He was definitely mean. He was definitely mean It was George hitting him with some jabs and some right hands straight down the middle. But Michael Moore was he was coming with
Their
everything.
knockout shots to anybody else. You know what I mean, Trill? I mean, you look at the even Big George, he was 250 pound there. His
Yeah,
head was snapping back from them punches. They would have knocked. There you go. There's one there. They would have knocked most boxers out today now.
look at that. And he's sitting there. This is third round here, and Michael Moore's he's sitting there. He's covering up. He's taking some shots.
Yeah, because he's felt that Big George power. When you're covering up like that, look at that combination. That was his, his favorite.
He was giving it back to George. I think that he was more faster, but he was still staying in front of Big George, which was a little crazy. I remember Teddy Atlas saying that he wanted him to make angles and move away, but he felt like he had Big George's number. He could feel his power. We in round 5 here, and George is just still touching him. And George would later on went to go and see that when he was throwing his jab and he was throwing his right hand, he wasn't throwing all his power. He was just touching him. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't loading up yet. But as you see, Michael Moore was teeing off on Big George.
Yeah, all the cards. He was up by 5-6 rounds at this point.
Yeah,
but Teddy Atlas. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, he was definitely up on all the cards, and he was putting a beating on George. You can see the bruising starting to bruise. It's the 6th round, and George's face is getting all puffy and stuff like that.
That's right, but he's still swinging the durability. Teddy Atlas was actually terrified of George Foreman's strategy because he knew by round 7 that Michael's pop was starting to fade, and if you could hear the conversations during the fight, if everybody go back and watch this fight afterwards, go back and watch what Teddy Atlas was saying to Michael Moore in between rounds, because he knew that this was a problem to Michael at this point.
Yeah,
George was just taking sheer punishment off him.
Yeah,
but George was said all along, I'm setting him up. I'm setting him up.
Yeah, that was the big thing. We're going to get into that. We're going to get right into that. We're going to talk about all that because George was getting hit with a lot of things. He was getting hit with everything but the kitchen sink. We like to praise George because of the ending, but during this fight, I had George losing every round. You know what I'm saying, bro?
Yes, sir.
I had him losing every round. I thought that Michael Moore was just beating up on the old man.
Yeah. By round 10, the sheer volume of punches, he was 9-1
Michael Moore was just staying right in front of him.
Yeah. Now this is the problem. Moore started to trade in the middle with him, and this was the problem that Teddy Atlas said.
Too brave, right here. Down go. Yeah, and it happened. It happened. The famous words.
Now, people were criticizing the referee here because he actually waved it. He got up at 9 and waved it off straight away. But he was in no condition to carry on. Look at that.
He wasn't.
That's how much he meant to Big George. He'd done it 2 times.
And he jumped down and he prayed.
Heavyweight champion of the world.
Right here. Boom. 1-2.
He'd set it up. How many times that left-right combination? He'd done it so many times, and he wore him down. And bang, that was it. But Teddy Atlas saw it coming.
It happened,
and he praised him, afterwards. But it was just an unreal moment. Jim Lampley said it happened. He couldn't believe it. He was one of them who said before the fight that he didn't give George a chance. Just goes to show you, when you've got belief and courage and all the faculties that of a man of 45 can bring to this equation, it's unreal accomplishment.
Yeah. That was really big. That was really big. The comment section. We had Trey. Trey was in the comment section and he said something. He said, "Big George." He would say he was setting it up. He was setting it up the whole time, the legendary Jim Lampley. Yeah, it happened. It happened. Big George was able to make history. after he stopped Michael Moore. George Foreman was
Yes,
to make history. Yes, he was.
there's history in motion. At that point, the way he went down, uh, incredible scenes, iconic photos now of Big George. Turning the tide of history, and once again repeating that the old masters, you're gonna have to come with a better strategy, uh, because they'll have your number. And 2 times the old men did it. Ali with the rope a dope, George Foreman with the punch and grind and taking the punishment like a walking punch bag and throwing back bombs. He must have mentally done. I mean, and don't you said it right. This was a no nonsense hard New Yorker in Michael Mora. And he proved then to prove his worth by becoming a three-time three-time champion of the world, including his light heavyweight titles, by winning the IBF belt of Franz Botha less than 2 years later, which George vacated. So George played a hand in his resurrection as well after that. Ironic.
Yeah, definitely. But we was talking about Big George setting him up. And
Yes.
everybody been talking.
Michael Mora called bullshit.
Yeah. We're gonna get into how Michael Moore felt about this, because in the comment section, you see me, I got my popcorn. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Woman versus Moore, I got my popcorn and it's Fight Night Chronicles. You know what I'm saying? Um, I'm a fan of boxing. I just love this, like the classy one, Mr. Neutral. So George Foreman told everybody, like, I seen it. I had a dream that I knocked him out. And he told everybody I was setting him up. But Michael Moore had this to say.
Bullshit. Don't fake it. You got lucky. Don't sit there and say you planned it. By no means.
What happened, buddy?
That was Michael Moore's response to everybody and to Big George, who said that he set that up. You know, he said he feels like he just got carried away because every day was just too easy for him, you know, and he just stood in front of him and he got hit with a good shot. He said the first shot that he got hit with, he paused. He said he was out on his feet. And then the other one just took him out. You know what I'm saying?
He was angry, as Trey quite rightly said. The young man was angry and bitter. And the way George Foreman was after the Ali loss, he was the same, angry and bitter for years about it.
Yes,
The way he said, that was set up. But this was different. This was more a sort of attacking that strategy when it was clear, you know, he felt he got lucky. But I can tell you now, from this old man watching back, and it's lovely to watch that back again, he was never going to beat George Foreman. It was always going to be a knockout situation, because from round 7, he started to change his strategy. He would move in and out for the first 7 rounds with George, laying leather on him, then pause, them hands, but only to falter at round 7 when he changed his strategy and thought he could finish big man George Foreman, 2-time heavyweight champion of the world, by trading with him, £252, who put men to sleep for fun, because he said, I've got no ill will towards a man, but you step in that ring and it's a world of pain and hurt. And he brought it.
And not to mention, and the oldest man to win the
Heavyweight champion of the world.
exactly. Huge accomplishment for George Foreman. Big George, in his victory, he also proved a lot of things. Everybody says, what's the last thing to go on an Asian fighter?
Power.
This is power. And Big George, he used his power. I was just shocked in the fact that Michael Moore was sitting there willing to take these shots from Big George when I feel like he had the footwork to move out of the way and get out of the way of this. He was just too cocky. I think his arrogance at the time. I think like Trey, he had nailed it. It's his youth, the youth sometimes.
But I think there was an extra element to Big George in this fight, maybe two. One of them was his durability. Ali, knocked him out, but you saw what it took to knock Big George down.
Mm-hmm.
One would say Michael Moore brought bigger heat, but when George faced Ali, he didn't have God behind him. This was a man who had faith behind him. That extra element won him the day. The way he postulated at the end of the 10th round, when he knocked down Michael Moore, told the world what it meant to him. And what it meant to his churches, the security that he could bring to them. And after all, he made no secret of the fact that he came back for money to help his churches, not him personally, but his projects. And he carried the word of God straight through to becoming two-time world champion on the 5th of November, 1994.
Yeah, this is definitely, and we're gonna replay this fight again for the people that probably tuned in a little bit later and didn't get to see the highlights, how we ran through the highlights. Yeah. But we're gonna play the highlights again for you, because this is actually a monumental moment in history of boxing. When you see Big George being the oldest man to grab a heavyweight title. There's so much to say, and we talk about fate. The first thing he did, he was calm in that corner of the ring where Michael Moore was being counted out, and the first thing he did was look to the heavens.
Yes.
He looked to the heavens, said thank you, and fell to his knees, and he gave thanks and he prayed.
Powerful moment.
Powerful moment. It's a powerful moment that I get to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, watching right now. Once again, we're going to replay the highlights of that night.
There's always points to be seen again.
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking in my head, should I play the beautiful poem from George Foreman again? Should I play that again, or should I just go right into the highlights? I don't know. It's up to you, Mr.
I think it's all beautiful.
We're going to do for the viewers that just tuned in right now, who just locked in right now. We're going to do the whole thing over from the beginning. This was a beautiful night.
To dream the impossible dream. To fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this. That one man, scorned and covered with scars, still fights with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable stars.
Tonight, an impossible dream fulfilled or shattered. 45-year-old George Foreman faces heavyweight champion Michael Moore in his quest to regain the most glorious title in sport.
Yeah, Big George.
Yeah.
71 wins, 68 KOs, 4 losses, 0
Still
draws.
brings a lump to my throat, Trill, that does, man, every time I hear that, man, and what it meant at that time. I was there. I was a young man there, just in my 20s. And he was the bad man, Michael Moore.
Michael Moore,
George was
35 wins,
very much
KOs.
he was the villain back in that, at that time. He was rude to the media. Nobody could get an interview out of him without him either walking off or being sarcastic. He was hard work.
Yeah. It turned into one of those, George was the good guy and Michael Moore was the villain. And like Shoes was reversed because he was the villain against Muhammad Ali.
Absolutely. It's such a redemption arc. It's beautiful because he'd seen both sides of the coin. One being the villain and now being the everybody's hero. And I remember when he won this, just jumping up in the air. I was in a pub at the time, and I swear I lost about 3 drinks. They were all lined up, and they all gone by the end of the celebrations. So I had to start all over again. But that was just a small sacrifice to celebrate this night and this win, and to watch that man after everything. I was a big follower, George, and to his personal life, and to see this happen against all the odds, the punishment he took, nobody was giving him a chance. We were all thinking he's running out of time. He's running out of time, and that 10th round just come around, and it was just an incredible moment, to feel. I always say to people, Trell, the good guys, they all want George to win. The bad men, they all wanted Michael to win. And the bad men were laughing for 10 rounds at this, calling it a mismatch, calling it a ridiculous beating of an old man. All changed in round 10.
Yeah, definitely. If you watching this fight again, man, I recall watching this fight. I actually had the opportunity to watch this fight. I was in the boys' home, when I seen this fight happen. And it was actually, I didn't understand the importance at the time until I got older.
Yeah.
And was able to watch this fight again. But at the time, I'm looking at it like we all rooted for George Foreman just because we knew who he was. You know what I'm saying? Like, we knew he was more iconic, we knew Big George from being in the commercials and everything like that. So when we were seeing Big George get rocked, we was like, oh, man. And then when he won, it was a celebration. But we didn't realize how monumental this moment would actually be.
I mean, when we were watching it, stay behind in a pub, you're locked in, you're not supposed to be there, nobody, let's not talk about that, but yeah, and everybody, you didn't have social media, so the only people you knew who were supporting people were there with you, watching at that time, the actual fans, and all the shouts were for Mora, and the young men in the boozer. I was probably the only young man that was going for George Foreman. All the older chaps, they were all for Big George. So it was very much an age generation fight, for the generations here.
Yeah, definitely, man. You see,
And I,
George was swinging. They was still in that 1-2, just 1-2.
is that 1-2 every time?
Bow. He's still getting closer. Boom. And Michael Moore's just standing right in front of him. He dipped that time, but he's just standing right in front of Big Joe.
Right in front of him.
He said
Big
he was
mistake.
hurt that and then bow. He went down. He said
There
he
you
was
go.
hurt. That first 1-2, he said he was hurt. That's why he just stood there.
Michael Moore said, my body had gone. My soul had left my body. I had nothing. Look at that.
Look at George. He looked right up and then
He
went
looked
down.
right up to, he thanked God just there and then.
Listen, I wasn't lying. I seen that part. I said, oh, that was a powerful moment right there.
Such a beautiful man.
Wow. There it is.
All the way through fight week. He even had Teddy Atlas mad at him. Teddy Atlas was went for George in the pre-fight press conference. It was, he had to be held back.
He's a fraud. He's a fraud.
He's a fraud. And Big George was just smiling, so calm, so collected. And, all over a comment about sunglasses.
Yeah.
He made, Teddy Atlas, he made them angry. And that anger, you could tell Michael Moore was bringing into that fight. And he had to come up with a plan B and that was the thing. Instead of just boxing George for 12 rounds, there would never been a problem. But he wanted to knock George out bad to stop all this talk of him becoming a 2-time world champion. You could see the media were all on George's side because he couldn't talk to the media like George could. So, as narratives were set again against Michael Moore for that fight. So he come into that fight exactly like George Foreman came into with Ali. It was such a reversal, a reversal of roles. And George embraced it beautifully as Ali did against him. Lessons learned.
Yeah, definitely. We talk about this fight and the build up to the fight. We talked about during the fight. Let's talk a little bit about after the fight.
Yeah.
There was some like I said, George went on to make some claims that he was setting up Michael Moore the whole time. And Michael Moore, famously said,
"Bullshit. Don't fake it. You got lucky. Don't sit there and say you planned it. By no means."
Yeah, that's how he said. But later on, these guys became, good friends.
Yes, he did. And Michael Moore, he did admit in later interviews, I got careless. I was winning every round and I stood in front of him for too long. And that's all it takes with a man like that. And when he was asked about the knockout, he shook his head. He said, I never saw it. I don't even remember the punch. I thought I was fine. I looked up and saw the referee counting. He's strong, real strong. You can't give a man like George Foreman a second chance. He'll make you pay for it. Mm-hmm. And behind the scenes, Teddy Atlas was furious, pacing the locker room, his voice echoing over the noise of the press even. He felt Moore hadn't followed his plan, that emotion overrode instruction. And it was the kind of defeat that fractures corners and, tests loyalty. For Moore, it wasn't just the loss of a title, it was the loss of the perfect record, 34 wins, 30 by knockout, no defeats, gone in a flash. He left the ring that night humbled, reflected, but far from finished. And he told reporters, it's boxing. You make one mistake and it can cost everything, but I'll be back. And back he came. 2 years later, he regained the IBF belt that George had vacated against Franz Botha. Took him the distance and won the fight and become a 3-time champion of the world. And as yours truly, Tree says, they are still legends, both of them. Uh, but it was Foreman's destiny, absolute destiny, to win that fight. But the fight will be remembered a lot for Mora's dominance as well. So he will be fondly remembered for that fight as well. You know, by fans that when they go back and see it and see what he was having to in his personal life, it was no accident that Mora was like that. He had been
Mhm.
driven like that from a young age, and we're not responsible for the foundations that are laid for us as children by our parents. People have to rebuild those foundations as adults, and both of them men did. Legends, the pair of them. Thank you, Trill.
Yeah, definitely. Michael Moore also, we got to think about it too. That he ended his career with 52 wins, 40 of them by knockout, 4 losses.
Incredible,
You know,
incredible.
he lost to George Foreman. He lost to Evander Holyfield. He lost to, and that was later. That's in the second fight. Um,
Yeah,
but that was much, much, much later.
yeah. 1997, he lost to Holyfield and David Tua in
And David,
2002.
yeah,
But he was getting on then, and he
yeah,
only lost one more fight of his next
yeah, Costello,
eight.
yeah, yeah, and I think,
Castillo.
yeah, to a 17-0 Castillo.
Yeah,
But then
beaten.
got to think about a big win when everybody thought he was finished, and it was like I think it was one of those. I don't know if it was I don't want to disrespect any of the titles, but it was one of those titles, and he went out there against Vasily Jurov. There was one of those fight. He went up against Vasily Jurov, and he
Yeah,
had one of those last hurrahs, right? And
WBC
every
Continental America's belt, I believe, is the
exactly,
vacant belt.
exactly, right. And then that still is boxing again, redoing it all over again. People said that was his George Foreman moment.
Yeah, he
That was
knocked him
his
out in
moment.
round 9.
Yeah, that was his moment right there, where the young man was coming on and he was hurt and he was rattled against the old fighter, and he was able to have that moment against Vasily Zhurov, who was actually doing his thing at that time, you know. So he was able to take him out, and everybody was saying that was his moment. That was his moment, like how when George had his moment with Ali, and then Moore had his moment with George. Now Moore was able to have his moment.
Isn't it incredible to think that when George Foreman retired in 1977,
Mhm.
he was the same age as Boots Ennis is now,
Mm.
and then come back at the age of Terence Crawford and went on to have 28 fights. It's just unthinkable, Trill, in today's environment that could be done, and people have to pay some goddamn respect to the achievement. No matter how bad you think boxing was back in that day, but I assure you now, it's huts, and he got hurt.
Yeah, definitely does. Definitely got hard. He was one of those ones, and even when George Foreman had passed, it hit everybody. It hit everybody hard. Um, and shout out to his nephew Jonathan,
Jonathan,
yeah, who I was able to have on the show
yes, seen it.
before on the
Great show,
yeah,
great job.
yeah. Great guy. Yeah, everybody had love for Big George Foreman. And even Michael Moore had love for George Foreman. This was just a quick little piece that he had to say about George Foreman, because it was so fun. Yo, this is the beauty of boxing. This is the beauty of boxing. Um, you think of the sport and you think of these guys going in there and they punching each other's uh, heads off, trying to knock each other out. But the respect that these guys have for each other, like when they asked George about Muhammad Ali when we did the clip, and he was like, "Yeah, don't talk to me about him being a good boxer. This was a great man."
Yeah.
Right? And it's just funny how we keep playing this back and forth. Like, this is how, like, this is Michael Moore and George Foreman. It was kind of like how George Foreman and Ali was. This is going to give you goosebumps when you hear what Michael Moore had to say about George Foreman.
He lost a great fighter and a great, great man.
Same words.
Same words. Same words. And that's what we strive to be at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying?
Most men are forgotten within 2 generations. People like Muhammad Ali, Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard. These guys will be remembered for eons. Such is the powerful, iconic images that they produced in the sport of boxing. Never to be repeated. I was just so lucky and privileged to be able to see that.
Yeah. I'm glad to be. I was alive during this moment in time. I know it seems like, but yeah, man, I was just privileged, and I'm glad I got a chance to witness George Foreman, seeing him live in the ring and being alive while he was alive. Yeah, everybody loved Big George. Question, Mr. Neutral. Let's just talk boxing. Let's just talk boxing right here.
Yeah.
When you talk about these two fights, well, these two fighters, where do you rate this fight for George Foreman? Do you think this is one of his most important or biggest wins ever?
In the modern era, yes, because if people that are around today that talk about boxing, they can only go back so far unless you're like my age or older, and then we start become few and far between, as we get older. But people argue the wins to get his belts to become unified for George Foreman were important to an older generation. But to my generation, yes, I was around very young man, very young boy, even just under 10 when I was thinking. No, in fact, I was 6 when Ali beat Foreman. So I didn't watch that. I didn't watch it 2 years later. But this fight for Foreman against Mora in my 20s, watching it live with people around me who were rooting for one guy or the other, that was something else. And I have to say that's the fight I remember George the most, Michael Mora, and what he did there to become 2-time unified world champion was just ridiculous. It's ridiculous achievement.
Yeah, iconic moment. What do you think is, because we're celebrating, so I don't want to leave the question out about with Michael Moore. Michael Moore's, to me, his best victory, I have to say, will be against Evander Holyfield, right?
Yeah.
I need to know Mr. Neutral's best 3 George Foreman wins. If you had to go back and, you know what I'm saying? You're like me. Like, we go back, like, and watch old fights. I go back and watch fights in black and white, right? You know what I'm saying? And sit back where I'm sitting at my desk, and I go back and I watch these fights when I got some time just to kick it. If you could pick 3 fights that you say like, yo, these was the 3 big George fight, the Clooney fight, what fights you think was the good fights for you? If you could pick 3.
Got me here because he had so many knockouts.
Yeah, I'll give you my 3, right? And give you
Yeah.
a chance to think. The first one I'm gonna go with is with Joe Frazier. When Big George Foreman beat Joe Frazier, I just thought the way he did it and at the time that he did it was just crazy. Smoking Joe was smoking, you know. Smoking Joe was just smoking, and we seen what he did to Ali, you know, and everybody Ali was everybody's favorite, you know what I'm saying? Especially everybody thought that the title was his, you know, he never lost his title. You know, nobody never beat him for this title. Smoking Joe went out there and beat the great Muhammad Ali, right? He was the first one to do it, you know, and then it was and it was a battle. It was a battle, right? And then he goes in there with George Foreman, who later said that we'll get to that. But he went in there with George Foreman, and George Foreman, it was crazy. He had him dancing around the ring. He had him dancing around the ring. He dropped him a couple of times and had him dancing around the ring. It was crazy. Nobody believed what they were seeing. Frazier went down again. Frazier's down again. You know what I'm saying? And then later to come to find out that when they say who was they asked George Foreman who was the fighter that he was most afraid of, he said Joe Frazier. And I'm like, I can't tell. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Tell the way he handled him. I couldn't tell, but he said he was shaking, and he was like, he glad that Joe Frazier didn't look down at his legs because his legs was just a shaking, you
Yeah.
know, because he was nervous, and he went in there and he, you know, put them paws on Joe Frazier.
Yeah, that was a brutal sort of. I mean, that was sort of an emasculation knockout.
Yeah,
Such was, you know, the manner in which he'd taken care of Joe. But another one was Ken Norton. That was a brutal knockout, and that was that for me. That was the one that really put the world on notice. You know, because Muhammad Ali had 3 fights with Ken Norton.
mm-hmm.
Uh, Incredible knockout. And then another one was probably back in 1988, and Muhammad Dwight Kwawi, when he can come back in one of his first, and he knocked him out,
Yeah.
and he was a name.
So you
So
got so you
there's sort of the 3 that I could pick of George's,
so you picking
apart from Michael, of course.
okay, so you got those 3. You got Michael Moore, you got Corey, and you got what's the other one that you said?
Muhammad Kwawi,
Quarry, and you said somebody else. Norton and
Ken
Norton.
Norton. Yeah.
Those are your 3. My 3 is the one with Smoking Joe Frazier. The second has to be with Ronnie Lyles. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. That was another
that
great.
yeah,
Another
that
great stoppage.
yeah,
See, that's what I
that
mean. When you first mentioned it, you said, "You know, what's his best friend?" You go, "Oh, hold on a wee minute here. I've seen so many of his fights. I'm gonna
yeah.
have to have a look and remember which ones." So yeah, it was. You know, the
Adversity. That's the reason why I like
yeah,
that. Adversity. He said he has never been hit so hard before. He said he was hit so hard that he felt nothing. You know what I'm saying? He said he was hit so hard that he felt nothing. No pain, no nothing. And that's the worst type of pain. He said he just kept dropping me and I don't know what's going
numb,
on. And that fight
numb.
right there, if you go back and watch that fight, people talk about Hagler and Hearns. Y'all got to go back and see that fight with Big George Foreman and Ron. That right there is my number 2. And then number 3, yeah, number 3, I would have to say is is the Michael Moore in George Foreman. I have
Yeah.
to.
Obviously, yeah, Mora, Norton, and Frazier for me. They're his best three wins.
Yeah.
You know, Quarry. I mean, they're all in his first legacy, though. Uh, if you go his second leg, apart from the Mora fight, of course, but his second legacy, he had some good wins on there.
Yeah.
Buck Cooper. Sorry, not Buck Cooper. Dwight Quarry. Um, he had another notable name on his, when he was coming back before the Mora fight. Jimmy Ellis, that was a good. Terry Anderson was another one. Obviously Jerry Cooney,
Mm-hmm.
he was a big name. So the people who remember them fights will probably fondly remember those better for that version of George. But again, he's one of the very few people that had these two careers: Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, um, just to name a couple, who had these cross careers due to one reason or another, because such was the status symbols to American boxing and world boxing. All three of them, for one reason or another, were superstars,
Mm.
and because of that, certain problems followed them, but they come back, and all three had two successful careers, all become champions again. Fantastic.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode, the episode 2 exactly of the Fight Night Chronicles. We thank you from the bottom of my heart. Make sure that you you like and you subscribe and to the channel. Make sure you like this video as well. Shout out to Mr. Neutral, my brother. Thank you for joining me for another episode. We got another special episode for everybody next week. You're definitely gonna love it. This is definitely gonna be a special one. Yeah. Shout out to you too, Trey, and shout out to everybody.
Big up to Trey. Thank you so much, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to everybody that's watching right now. I seen the numbers keep going up as we kept going on, man. So definitely thank you everybody for tuning in. Please, like I said, this is for educational purposes only, and we do this because we love it. Once again, please like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out my new song, Savage, out now on all streaming services. You can go check that out. Mr. Neutral, we did it again. We did it
Done it
again.
again, mate. Great show. Thank you very much, Trill. I mean, a lot of planning goes into these shows, as you can imagine. In the background, we talk about it all week. It's such fun, and then to produce it on a Sunday is just great. We love it.
Yeah, definitely. And shout out to the one and only Michael Moore, and rest in peace to George Foreman. And I'm gonna leave with the words from Michael Moore about George Foreman.
He lost a great fighter and a great man.
You gotta respect it. You know what I'm saying? Much love, much respect. We out of here.